This is the TTARTISAN 75mm f2 Pro lens for the L mount, and it retails at $178, and that's good news from a finance point of view, but also the L mount can do with some additional third-party or native lenses. The TTARTISAN 75mm is aimed at portrait photographers, but as usual, I use a more narrow focal length to document my everyday life and travels, so I use it for the last couple of weeks. So in this video I'm deep diving into how the TTARTISAN 75mm performs in the real world, from the build quality, autofocus and chromatic aberration to actual field examples, and this time, unlike my normal videos, it will not only be limited to photography but also a lot of video sample. Let's start with the build quality. This is an all metal housing. It comes with a lens hood, which I've lost actually, and an aperture ring. It's not weather sealed, and while it is a no frills lens, it does feel nice and solid. At 348 grams, it balances perfectly on my Lumix S9. But even on something bigger like the S5 series or the S1R series, this lens won't weigh you down, which I think is absolutely wonderful. And I actually shot the last 2 weeks without needing my Stereo grip. So this is good news. This lens is ultra light. Now let's go into the aperture ring. And as you can see, it clicks, it makes nice clicky sounds, but there's definitely a little bit of slag. If I compare this, for instance, to my Sigma lenses, you definitely feel the difference. But honestly, at this price point, that's to be expected, and it doesn't really impact negatively, I have to admit. But when it comes to build quality, it's a good solid build quality, but a little bit of slack on the aperture ring doesn't really ruin my experience. Now let's talk image quality. I took this lens out on a short trip just to get a feel for it, spend a ton of time taking pictures, and in general I was really impressed with this lens, how it behaves. So one of the things you normally see, specifically with faster lenses, there's quite noticeable vignetting. And I'm not a pixel peeper in this case, and I don't normally mind vignetting, as it is, after all, a portrait lens, so it nicely centers a bit, but basically it's non-existent. Wide open at f2, there is some minor vignetting. It's not really noticeable. And even if there was, Lightroom will handle this in seconds. But what really stood out for me is what you often see with cheaper lenses. You've got fringing and chromatic aberration. This here, none of it. If you really start pixel peeping, you can see a bit. I can only say, TTARTISANs, you nailed it there. Even wide open, shooting backlit portraits or hairlines against the sky, I couldn't find any fringing, and that's impressive. So Viltrox, if you're listening, maybe go to TTARTISANs and learn a bit of the craft. Before we continue, if you're interested in more L-mount reviews or tutorials, please consider subscribing. Now you'd almost say this lens is perfect, right? Now, not really. Let's go into autofocus. On the Lumix S9, it's pretty snappy in general, 95% of the time. And yeah, TTARTISAN pushed a firmware update for better compatibility, which I installed. But here's what I noticed. In bright daylight, the lens tends to hunt a bit, especially when pointing towards the sky. And it is not, let's say, on wide open on f2. I'm talking f5.6 or even f8. In overcast conditions, sometimes it just misses. Don't ask me why. It seems to be in very high contrast situations. Let's say a building with shade and then highlights. I've had this multiple times. So that's something where I was really surprised about. Is it fixable? Well, I had to adjust my focus area on the S9 a few times. It's not ideal, and in some cases it worked. So in about 90% of the situation, autofocus is fine. It's nice and sticky, as you can see here. But in that other 10%, you'll definitely notice it. And at times it can be a bit frustrating. Maybe it's the S9, but for some reason, hunting comes along and it's not consistent. When we go to video, in my experience for talking head setups, as long as you don't move too much, for autofocus will nail it for 95–99% of the time. Face detect works really well, so TTARTISAN really did what it could here. But what I just said, in busy scenes with people walking around through the frame, or in more complex compositions where there's a lot of contrast, a lot of highlights, it gets a bit inconsistent. So that means that you don't have a hit rate for photo or video, let's say of 90%, at times it drops to 75%, and at times it increases to 100%. So I don't know what's going on there. Focus breathing, as you can see in the samples here, is clearly there. It's not terrible, but it's noticeable. So if you're planning to rack focus a lot, be aware of it, right? This is really something where it can make your day or it can't. Now, if I look at how this really behaves and characteristics of the lens, well, I only use it for 2 weeks on a daily basis, but various different genres. And honestly, I find this lens very good. I find it very good. If you look at the price quality, it is extremely good, but it's not without its flaws. In low light, strangely, it handles well. It doesn't have that overly contrasty look that screams budget lens. It doesn't. It's very well balanced. In fact, it's actually pretty neutral in character, which is nice if you want to grade or tweak your images later. And of course, depending on the LUTs you also apply in the Lumix camera that you're using, or maybe you're using a Sigma camera. Pretty much the same there. So to conclude, the pros. It's a great build for the price. It's sharp, wide open, barely any vignetting or fringing, which, well done. It's lightweight and compact, so whether you have the S9 or for instance the latest Sigma BF, it really would balance there. Its autofocus is, I would say, normally solid in many scenarios, but not in all. So I give that a 7 out of 10 autofocus. Well, now let's make it 6.5. For the cons, obviously, elephant in the room here, the occasional autofocus misses in odd lighting. That happens. Some focus breathing, that's specifically for video, very noticeable. But again, it's not constant, so it's not that it happens. The aperture ring may be a bit critical, has a bit of play, but given the fact that this lens is actually affordable, I wouldn't worry about it. I think overall this lens is a total win for all of us L-mount users. And in essence, it gets the job done about 95% of the time. Anyways, thank you for watching.